Have you hit bottom? Have you hit bottom? It's kind of funny to say with this coronavirus. Have we hit bottom? That term is a term from Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm sure it's from many places, but it's commonly used in Alcoholics Anonymous. And the hit bottom is to finally reach the end of the rope and to finally seek help in your life. Help from God and help from God's people. Now, there is what is known as a high bottom and a low bottom. High bottom is when an alcoholic drinks out of control a couple of times and realizes that he can't control it and seeks help. That's a high bottom. A low bottom is someone who takes forever to finally realize that they do not have control over their life. And they're usually people that have numerous DWIs and constantly maybe lived a long time with the addiction before they sought help. That's a low bottom. Now, we might be thinking about this just in terms of Alcoholics Anonymous. But the reality is that at some point in our life, it may not be that drug of alcohol, but whatever it is, we are pretty much focused on control. And we finally hit a wall. And there's usually two things that happen before we really get help. The first thing that happens is usually we fail because that's what's supposed to happen when we try to take control. We're going to end up failing. We might succeed in some things, but we're going to fail. And then our idea is, let's try harder. We just got to do it harder. Or the other result is we become depressed and hopeless. I can never deal with this. And usually it goes back and forth in that. We try harder, it doesn't work, we become depressed for a while, and then we think, okay, let's put the boots back on, let's pull up the bootstraps on our own, and let's get to work again and try it. And it just goes back and forth for a long time in our life until we finally realize the game, that that's a game and it's not working. And hopefully at that point, because many people live their whole life doing just that. Trust me, I meet a lot of people. But then there are those people who realize the game, they give up, they surrender, they give in to God and realize they need His help. They need something beyond themselves. Because their self, their ego, that's what really crashes and burns eventually. When we're living out of our ego, and we live out our ego for very long, eventually that crashes and burns. That's what's driving us crazy. Then we reach out for help. You know, I see this in terminally ill people all the time. And there are those people that are terminally ill and they, you know, it's just where they're at. It's just what they know to do. But they fight it the entire time. The whole time that they're terminally ill until they die. And then there are those who, the other result, they become bitter and depressed. But then there's those few people that you'll notice that have learned to turn to God, to seek help. And they're not so much trying to control it anymore. They're just accepting life as it is. They're trusting in God, and they're trusting that it's going to be all right when they put it in God's hands. And they radiate peace. They radiate peace in their life. That's the challenge. That's real spirituality. All the other stuff is us trying to do it on our own. And if you really haven't hit rock bottom, you probably don't know what I'm talking about. But everything has to collapse. And so the reason why I bring all this up is that well, today we celebrate the Ascension. So what does this got to do with the Ascension? Well, we celebrate Jesus' ascension into heaven and his ascending. And we look for ourselves to do that. And we think it should be a straight line, one success after another, leading us all the way to heaven. No, it's not that way. Actually, Jesus showed us. How did Jesus ascend? Why did Jesus ascend? Because he first descended. He descended first in order to ascend. You know, he had to descend into this life, into all of it, into hell. Part of the creed, the Apostles' Creed. He had to descend into hell. His crucifixion. Everything was out of control. Everybody betrayed him. But he trusted the Father. He trusted that somehow the Father would bring him out of it. And so he ascended. The way up is the way down, or the way down is the way up, however you look at that. We have to be willing to descend, fall into God's hands, and we rise, falling upwards, as one spiritual writer put it. Now, us who are in religion, sometimes it's harder for us to get that than somebody else. Because a lot of times we use religion to avoid it. Well, I have my religion and my faith, so I will not have to deal with the crash. Right? You know, this is keeping me away from hell. That's her religion. Spirituality is for those people who have been to hell and know now how to live. And you know that you're like this. It's either, you know, when we're coming here and we're afraid of God and we're afraid of hell, we know we haven't reached bottom. We're still doing an ego trip. But if we're coming here because we've been to hell and we found that this gives us life, now we're on the right path. And so the challenge is to surrender to God. That is a real working spirituality. To go in that direction. And how we continue to have to do it. I keep taking control back in my life. If you're doing that, that's what I do too. And I keep finding out the hard way that just doesn't work. If I just turn to God and find how God might be leading me through his people, through one another, to ask for help, the most deadliest thing to our pride. We just want to do it on our own. And it feels like death when we finally give up, because it is death. We're letting go of the ego. Our ego is dying, and that's who we think we are, and we're really not that. We're really, our real identity is in Christ, not in our ego. I pray that you have a high bottom and not a low bottom.